This is the big one, the Grand. First raced in 1839, and here goes two of the most powerful men's eights you'll see.
So we're looking at the Australian 8, which is a combination. They're four that won so well in Linz. They absolutely killed the world. And the British National 8 that had a fantastic repechage. They beat Germany, but in the final they had to settle for second place behind the world champions and world best time. So it's a great matchup. My money's on the Australians, but I think either 8 could win this.
Yeah, there's the British 8 stroke by Will Satch. You know, if you're rowing behind a stroke, you'd want to be rowing behind Will Satch, the winner of the gold in Rio, back after an operation this year, looking strong. And at the moment, they're stroke for stroke, man for man, as they come through the start phase and push out.
I'd have to say that's a great start by the British. We're riding with Alex Hill, the Australian, the South Australian, who was stroke of that Australian 4, finished second in the Rio Olympics behind Molesey, who's in the boat opposite him, the big man from Molesey Bloke Club, you can see him there. But the Britain are moving well. I think that's a better start than they had in Linz, where they were really muscly off the start, the first 250, and I think it affected the way they moved from 250 through to 500. This one looks a bit looser, and I think maybe they're getting their act together. Great start from the Brits.
So this is a battle between the British 8 that are aiming towards the World Championships at the end of the summer, and an Australian 8 that's really come together to race at Henley. It's the bucket list of every oarsman, and to be in the Grand at Henley, it's an amazing environment to be racing in. So contrast between will and power. Let's see what happens.
So here's the move. Now Australia are making a move, Matt, and I think what's happened is they've got into a nice rhythm. Earlier, they've probably got less weight on the stretches on the front. There you see the Australian 8, very high rating, but very efficient. Their coach Ian Wright gets them to all ride the same way. They paddle with a pause at the finish, and they really come in sweet to the front end. And that sweetness gives that boat a real zip through to 500 metres and into 750, and I think that is carrying them slightly away from the British boat.
You're right, you called it well. They were up at 39-40 strokes a minute, pretty intense. Of course, the Australian 4 that have gone into this, they raced over in Linz at 40 to 43 strokes a minute, so the straight weight was high all the way through the course, not something they expected. Here's the British 8, used to perhaps a little bit less of intense stroke rate, more about power. Face of Will Satch there, making a gesture, asking Henry Philman in the coxswain seat to look across, maybe how they respond to the move. And Will's calling for another move. You can see him there calling for the move.
The thing is, Matt, that the British 8 do have a great second half. They're going to need it. The Australians will need, I think, about half or 3/4 of a length on the British 8, because there will be a charge coming from the likes of Satch, Tarrant, Sinclair and Sabihi in the stern of that British 8. Jurgen Grobler's changed the rigging of the British 8. He's moved Tom Ransley from the bow seat to row next to Mo Sabihi in a tandem. That maybe gave them a little bit of impetus off the start, but these South Australian stroke man Alex Hill, he really is setting a great rhythm for this crew. And you know, with that 4 that's in the Australian 8, they did so well. They jumped into an 8, scratch 8 last year at Lucerne. They gave the Germans, the world champions, world record holders, the shock of their lives, and they're doing it to the British National 8 here.
That's a very decisive move they've made over the last minute and a half, and they really have taken a huge stretch out of the British 8 in the middle of the course. So the Brits are going to need all their power and all the experience of those Olympic champions scattered through the boat there to respond, and they're hanging on, they're desperately hanging on to try to keep the overlap. And now it's time for the Brits to really try that response through the middle of the course. And will their power be enough? You can see Mo Sabihi, enormous athlete, sitting in the middle of the boat there. Huge puddles coming down from him, and they're holding on as the umpire warns the Australians. Immediate response there from the young Australian cox, Kendall Brodie, and she moves her crew out of trouble. She doesn't want to be unsettling them at this moment where the race is in their favour currently.
To my money, Jurgen Grobler, the British coach, will have told his lads, you're going to be down, you'll have to come through. But Ian Wright, I was talking to him this morning, he said, I'd like to have had another row just rather than this head-to-head against Britain, but he's so relaxed, the Kiwi coach of the Aussie. He's the hottest coach in world rowing at the moment. Coached the Swiss lightweight 4 to Olympic gold, the New Zealand under-23 8 to World Championship gold. Everything he touches turns to gold. The Australian 4 that won the World Championships last year, he coached that. He is a hot, hot property. Look what he's doing to the men in the 8. They all row the same. Beautiful, fluid, easy flow out front. Ian Wright won, Jurgen Grobler nil at the moment.
Well, the Brits are still managing to hang on just about to that overlap. They've responded, but it hasn't really brought them back any meaningful distance. They've just stopped the Australian onslaught as they try to slide away from the bits. Now we can see the Brits trying to move again and move again from overhead. You can see the overlap is, well, it's under threat. And can the Brits come back on terms? I think they're just moving a touch faster at the moment, Martin.
No, there's no way they can come back. Tailwind conditions, Matt. The water's run out for them. They might get like half a length at the finish, but it's done and dusted. The Australians will go on to contest the final of this race, I think, against the Romanians tomorrow, barring a miracle. Australia only won this event 3 times. First in 1912 when Sydney Rowing Club came over, then 97. Monster was in that crew. Then in 2000, the Brits are coming, but the water's running out.
Well, they're on the home water, many of these athletes, and the crowd's roar is right behind them. And I've seen some people do remarkable stuff in the last 500 metres here, but there's a long way to go, and the Brits will need to lift it, and the Australians have been rating above them all the way down the track. So there's probably only 15-20 strokes to go in these 2.8s. The Australians have raced an absolute blinder. So we look at the Brits throwing everything in to try to get back on terms.
The shout from the enclosures is enormous. People have waited to see this as the Australians come up to the finish line. You can see them there. The Australian National Training Centre, row at Canberra, and a brilliant win for them. They dominated in the second part of that course. The British coming over a length behind, back to the drawing board. We won't see them to the European Games in August, but a fantastic win for the Australians. Angus Moore, Josh Hicks, Josh Booth, Tim Masters, Spencer Taryn, Alex Pennell come into the 6th from the quad, Hargreaves, Hill and Brodie the Cox. Amazing stuff.
Well, exhaustion and some feeling of despondency on the faces of the Brits. They really want to be in the final. Let's look back at the approach to the race they took. Speedy puts on the specs and away they go. Australia straight away rating higher, more aggressive power, and immediately started to move on the Brits. Made a great move about this point in the course, and then they broke away and they really took that length lead and consolidated all the way through.